Hey guys, how's it going? In this third episode about more magic to your microservice handcrafted in Java, we will do some more tricks today, and the trick today we want to do is that we want to react upon the events of CDI being finished with injection or being about to remove your instance from the heap, which are two very important events you want to react upon in lots of applications. And to be able to react upon that events, we need another API we can compile against, and this is the interceptors API. If you haven't heard before, the interceptors API is good for intercepting the call of methods, and it's also Welt under the hood who is acting here as the interceptor. To be able to use the interceptor API, we need to go back into our POM file and add more APIs. We added already injection and CDI. If you remember, injection is about add inject and add singleton, and CDI is about application scoped annotations. And now we have another one. We need an annotation API to be able to add that annotations that we need to intercept calls. So we need the version number. I am using a property again as I did it in the last videos. Let's go to our section here. As I said, this is a personal idea of mine that I want to have the version numbers all in one block so I can easily check if I'm using the right versions or switch to newer versions. Sorry, why is it not removing? I have a small problem with my keyboard again. It's not a standard keyboard and it does not always what I want to do. Okay, so we need version 2.1. And now we can use more annotations, and the annotations we need to intercept is post construct and pre-destroy. So let's make a small but senseless demonstration. For example, if we want to intercept the creation or destruction of this resource, then we can go here with pre-destroy, for example, give it some method void before destruction. The name is really arbitrary, and we could do something like logging, for example, or we could free specific resources or whatever you want to do before the destruction of this resource. So for now we go with out print line destruct, for example, and there is a symmetric one which is post construct, and I will explain you the difference to other similar things in a few seconds. Let's call it create. Okay, so let's first run it so you have seen what happens at runtime. I'm starting the application, it's booting up like before, and we can start and give it some info, hello. And you can see twice create, destruct, create, destruct. So what's going on here? So question number 1, why is it 2 times? Well, I actually had 2 requests in my demonstration. The first request is when I start up the application and click on that link. At that moment, my browser is firing a GET request. So it is creating a resource, injecting the greetings factory, and having injected it, it calls the post construct method create. And the application is sending back HTML to the browser, and having sent the HTML, this part of the application is done, so the resource is destroyed, so it calls before destruction, and then it tells CDI that the greetings factory is not needed anymore. So if it wouldn't be a single, it would get destroyed now, or if it would be in a different scope, the scope would have to decide. Actually, if the scope is surviving the end of the request, then it will stay, and if the scope would not, then it would be destructed. And I added information in the browser and pressed the send button, the submit button, and pressing the submit button is sending another request, which is a post request to my application, and the hello world resource is created again in memory. So the same happens. We have injection, we have post construct, and then we have greetings with the data sent in the post request. We're sending back HTML again, and after that the request is finished, so the resource is about to getting destroyed. So the factory is about to getting destroyed, but it's a single, so it will not. And then we have again this pre-destroy here, and the pre-destroy is fired before the destruction would happen. So this is something you need to keep in mind, that the post construct and the pre-destroy is coupled to CDI. It's about the CDI events of when is CDI finished with injecting and when is CDI about to destroy the injected things. So that's the difference between pure Java solutions, like, for example, having a static initializer or having a constructor. The constructor is is executed directly at the time of creation. Injection happens after that, and post construct happens after the last injection. On the other hand, you have Java things like, for example, there is no destructor like in C++, but you have finalizers, for example. And a finalizer is possibly not fired at all, but when it is fired, it's one of the last thing your class would ever see. The pre-destroy is fired when your class is not needed anymore from the view of CDI. So CDI wants to destroy the injected things now. And before that starts, before the first injected thing is about to getting destroyed, your pre-destroy is fired. So you're safe that at this time, between this method and before this method ends, this factory still is there. So that is the guarantee given. Again, all injected things will live when you are coming into this method and will still live while you are within this method. That's guaranteed by CDI. So that's why you need these. Without these, you wouldn't have this guarantee. Okay, so far about the injection. But there's even more you can intercept. We currently only intercepted CDI events. So in particular the post-construct and pre-destroy events. We can really intercept any method invocation, and this is very interesting. And actually there is a specification for that also supported by Weld, which is called the interceptors API itself. So we actually didn't use that, but we will use it now. And what we want to do is something like this. Let's copy a piece of code here. So we want to monitor calls, and for that we mark specific methods with a new annotation which I call monitored. You can name it anything you want, like logged, monitored, or whatever. Everything you want to monitor, you add your specific annotation to it, as long as it is an interceptor binding. So you can see here, monitored is an interceptor binding. And now you need a piece of code that is executed when you have a method called which is marked as monitored. And this is this one. You, again, name it anything you like. It's called monitoring interceptor in my case, and it will get fired every time around an invocation of any method marked with monitored. We will see the example soon. So we need this one, this method, which is getting an invocation context, so it's getting told what is intercepted, and I just do a print line for this demo. I actually don't do more interesting things. If you are interested in what you can do with the interceptors API, please, there are separate interceptors tutorials. Again, this video story is only about how to write a microservice from scratch by using that APIs. I just tell you there are these APIs, what they're good for, and how to add it to your project. Really, if we would go into depth with all the APIs, with all the details, this would be an endless video stream. So sorry if I don't answer all the questions in this series. This is how you make it work, in short. One thing, big tip, you always need CTX proceed. If you don't have this one, then actually you intercept the call. There won't be a method call at all. Every time you try to invoke the method, the print line would happen, but the execution of the method would not happen. Just in case nobody told you. Okay, so you see there's a lot of things we have to import. So we need to change the POM again and add the interceptors API. So we go here and add this one. And we need here the property. I always copy names. because I do typos so often that I don't dare to type a name when I'm recording a video. And it's 210 as far as I know. You can look up all the numbers on the Jakarta EE website, or simply search on search.maven.org for the numbers. By the way, sorry about me not being correct when I was talking about interceptors in the first way when I added annotations. I maybe should have been clearer at the start of the video that there are two different APIs for interception, which is the annotations API for the things we already did, like post, construct, and pre-destroy, and the interceptors API, which we have added now. Actually, they don't are related, they do related things, and that's why I have them in the same video, because they are about interception of events or methods. So having added that, we should be able to go back to the source code and let it fix all the missing imports. Yeah, we want this one. Yeah, we need to type a few things. So we have here this one. Now let's type it by hand. And I always like the static ones. It's just my personal likes and dislikes. I don't like that cluttering with the class names. So please don't mind if I'm doing this time. I think it's clear when somebody who knows how to read Java that type and method actually is the ones needed for target. I just don't like having the class names here. You can keep the class names. This is no this really is not that I say you must remove the class names. It's just my personal like. And I'm doing this here also. And as you see, I let the IDE do much the work. I could type, but I do typos all the time, so it's better for everybody if I don't type. Okay, now the compiler is happy, the IDE is happy, and we should be fine to run. So let's try it out. Yep. And we click. And the application works, and there's nothing on our screen. And the point why there's nothing on the screen, maybe you remember about me saying you can write any annotation that you like, you can name it anything you like as long as it's an interceptor binding and as long as you have an interceptor written for this annotation. Certainly you need to tell which method you want to actually intercept. So let's go, for example, with this one. And maybe now you understand why you wrote actually this annotation. First, the annotation tells the interceptor that you want to intercept this method, not all methods. Second, you can have many such annotations, so the annotation tells the framework for which of the annotated method, which interceptor to fire, which is this one because it has this annotation here. By the way, the priority is good for sorting the firing of the interceptors. If you have many interceptors and you're intercepting the same method with many interceptors, the framework needs to know the sequence when which is the first interceptor, which is the last one. So this is why we have this priority, and interceptor tells us this is an interceptor, actually not just a class. So let's do it again. And this time you should see a difference when I execute the example. So let's fire it again. Okay, there's nothing so far. Let's click on it. Click. Fuba. And now we see more things. We have to create and destruct, but we have these lines here. Invocation happened, which is apparently what I wrote in this command. And you see here that I used the cdx get method to find out what was the actual method that was intercepted. And you can see it here. It is in the hello world example, the hello world resources greetings method with the parameter of type string. And certainly you can check much more in this context. You have more context. Context information than just the method itself. And again, never forget to invoke proceed. By the way, let's do it. If you don't believe, let's do it. Let's return null, for example. You want to see things crashing, don't you? I always want to see things crashing because I don't believe that I made it correct in the first way. So let's click again. And you see nothing. So that's the proof. Nothing happened. When I destroyed the application, I certainly see the destroy. But I do not see actually the result. And the result is not there because the invocation of the method was triggered and the interceptor was fired, but we did not call proceed. Maybe now you believe that this really is essential if you want to proceed. There may be the fact or the case that you really want to skip the invocation. That's perfectly fine if you want to do that. But just to prove that it's working again. Yeah, it's working again. Okay, so far about intercepting, creation, destruction, and method invocation using the annotations API, using the interceptors API, and using weld at runtime. So far for today, and please come back to the next episode when I'm talking about what we can add on top of this to our microservice written from scratch in the Java language without an application server framework or whatever, just with a set of single specifications, APIs, and Jersey and weld. Okay guys, I hope you liked this video as much as I did and you learned that it's not too complex. So until next time, stay safe and as always, party on!